work or business? What is better to do? What is more profitable to do? What is easier to do? Let's look into all these questions. In general, any sensible person always strives for the best, the most profitable, the simplest and most convenient for him. This craving for everything best, profitable and simple, you may not even realize, it is embedded in us at the genetic level, so we instinctively reach for all this. But if a person is misled and influenced by his ideas about the profitable and best, to which he so passionately strives, then you can achieve that the person begins to reach for the worst and unprofitable, thinking that this is the best and profitable. That's exactly how things are with business and work. Those who understand what is more profitable to do business, and those who do not understand this work. Therefore, let's first try to understand why many people do not do business. After all, in order to confidently say what is better, work or business, it is necessary to compare one with the other, and if a person has never done business, then what can he know about it? Of course, nothing except what he could hear or read somewhere about business, but this is not the same at all. You can also have sex, as they say in kind, or you can read about it, or you can watch this process, you can talk about sex, what's the point of all this? But people can really know a lot about their work, about the work they do, precisely because they do it. It's logical, right? So, most people do exactly what they were taught to do, and therefore they know a lot about their work, and therefore, many people like their work. It is clear that if you were taught shoemaking, then you will be a shoemaker, and if you are taught to herd sheep, then you will herd sheep, and so on. Whatever a person is taught, that is what he will do in life, and if no one teaches him business, then with a high degree of probability, it can be assumed that he will never become a businessman. Although he may have an opinion about this type of activity, nowadays it is fashionable to have your own, supposedly your own, opinion about everything, which in fact does not interest anyone. So the first reason why people do not do business, and therefore do not really know anything about it, is the lack of the necessary education. They simply were not taught to make money with the help of business, so they work for them at work. And the fact that many people like their work is explained by the fact that they simply cannot compare their work with business, and without comparison, it is impossible to know something. Well, it is believed, at least that is what most people think, that we have a good education, the one we get at school, and then, if a person continues to study, then at college. This education is undoubtedly necessary for us, it allows us to learn many skills we need for life. But to call this education good, and even more so excellent, I personally cannot bring myself to say. Why? Because the overwhelming majority of people, having graduated from school and even college, even the most prestigious universities, then look for a job, that is their goal. And what does it mean to look for a job? It means that you are trying to find someone who will tell you what and how you should do, and in the case of your obedience and proper execution of the orders given to you, he will pay you a salary. That is, your employer, like a teacher at school, will give you grades, but already in the form of a salary. Do you think this is normal for you, as an adult? Well, I guess you could say that if we're talking about a very good salary, then in principle it's okay, let's say. For good money, you can work for someone else, you can do something for them. But if your salary doesn't impress you with its size, then there's no need to toady for it. I think so. You have to love, value and respect yourself, then others will love, value and respect you. And when it comes to money, then your employer's true attitude towards you is determined not by his compliments to you or anything like that, but by the salary he pays you. And as long as in most cases the salary is in no way comparable to the income that businessmen receive, then it's probably better to do business than to work for money, but on the condition that you know how to do this business. Were you taught how to do business at school, dear friends? I am sure you were not. Just like me. And they will never teach you. Why would they need it? Why would those who pay for your supposedly free education teach you how to do business? Well, it would seem, why not teach a person business? Why not teach him how to make money, and not work for it? Is it bad for the economy to have a large number of entrepreneurs and businessmen who would move this very economy forward with their activity? After all, such people do not need unemployment benefits, they do not need to look for jobs, they do not need to listen to their snot about how they have no money and no work, and so on. Is this bad? No, it is not bad, but entrepreneurs and businessmen are two independent people, relatively independent, and they also do not work for wages, that is, not for 0.1% of their labor, but for normal percentages, that is, for income. No state, even the freest and most democratic, can handle a large number of businessmen, because someone has to work for business, and someone has to work in factories, plants, in all sorts of harmful industries, someone has to serve in the army and the police, and so on. A businessman will never do something that is more profitable for someone else than for himself, while a hired worker, placed in difficult conditions, will be forced to work for pennies in order to somehow support himself. Businessmen and entrepreneurs are more freedom-loving people than hired workers, and our society, in addition to all sorts of managers and merchants, also needs slaves, and in large numbers, because we have a lot of dirty, low-paid, dangerous and harmful work that someone has to do. So teaching people to live for their own benefit, is somehow unprofitable. It is better to teach people to correctly follow other people's orders and work for pennies, that is really profitable. An example of this is the Chinese economy. And it is the same in the US, most people are also forced to work until they sweat. Maybe not for a bowl of rice, but still, work is work, it is not like lying on the beach. So the question of what exactly work or business is a profitable business for us, or business or work, in principle, I consider irrelevant, because the choice between the worst and the best should be made in favor of the best. And all doubts on this account can only justify the worst option. Of course, everyone would like to do business, and not just any kind, but one that allows you to work less and earn more, so that you are admired, respected and worshipped. But if you do business, it means that you will manage other people who will do some work for you, including not the most civilized. And who will do this? Who will work for you? Some not very smart and not at all independent person, who cannot take care of himself, and is forced to dance to the tune of the employer, right? Work, including not the best, should be done by someone who is prepared by school, whom it intensively nurtures for industry, business, science and other types of activity. We only teach businessmen in some special educational institutions, for example, in Harvard Business School and similar places. And some people do this for money via the internet, that is, they teach business, that's all. But it is not easy to get into normal educational institutions that really teach business, and not all sorts of nonsense, primarily because of the cost of education, which is not affordable for many. And all these cheap business schools, ready to teach you business for pennies, are, to be honest, outright crap, they will not teach you anything. Well, think for yourself, who will teach people to make big money for cheap, because it contradicts common sense, to teach for little money, to make big money. It is also not easy to find normal people on the internet who can teach you to do business for an acceptable price for you, and in real life, it is better to learn business from truly successful businessmen, if only they agree to teach you. In general, it is not easy to comprehend all the subtleties of business without having a wise mentor who has eaten a dog in this business as a teacher, and to delve into all this business yourself is very difficult, I can tell you this from my own experience. So if your dad is not an oligarch who can pass on to you the most valuable knowledge about business, then where can you get it? Not from all these books about wealth and success, after all. These books are good and useful in their own way, but they only touch on the periphery of such an important issue, which is the issue of business, wealth, and success. But really useful knowledge on this topic, you either need to collect bit by bit yourself, as I did in my time, or seek help, knowledge, from people knowledgeable in this matter, who, of course, not for free, can help you. But when looking for a teacher, beware of scammers who are happy to teach you anything, including business, because there have been an unprecedented number of them lately, especially on the internet. After all, when a person knows nothing about business, he can fall for any nonsense related to this topic. On the internet, I found such projects where people are offered to learn business, of course, for money, according to some incomprehensible theory, and upon completion of the training, they hand over a diploma. Well, friends, this sounds so funny that you even wonder how such a thing can be offered. Are there really idiots who need diplomas after studying business? Why do you need a diploma to show it to someone, right? Who are you going to show the diploma to if you decide to go into business? Your employees, your clients, or your business partners? Do they all need your diplomas, or do they need a good salary, good goods and/or services, as well as good interest? In business, diplomas are not needed at all. Well, as for theoretical business training, there's nothing to say. You might as well theoretically fish or plant potatoes. I don't think such a theory will feed you. You see, if you think about it, such proposals to learn business and get a diploma upon completion of training will seem like sheer nonsense. But someone gets caught on them, someone gets robbed this way. I'm telling you, there are so many scams on the internet that it's hard to sort through them all, and if you fall for several of them, you can lose all desire to learn anything at all. Therefore, be more attentive and careful. Don't get involved with just anyone. Work and business are two different poles, on one of which big money lives, that's our polar bears, and on the other small money lives, that is, penguins. By the way, it's for this reason that polar bears don't eat penguins, because they are on different poles, that's the thing. And in our case, the human mind is at different poles, when some people prefer to do business for money, and others are forced to work for it. Doing business is, of course, better, more profitable, more prestigious, but more difficult. It is easier to work for money, although of course everything depends on the work, but still, a person working for money basically must be able to carry out other people's orders, that is, the orders of his boss, and not think for himself. Whereas for a businessman, it is sometimes very difficult to manage his ship business, solving various problems that life, the state, and the economy as a whole, set before him. Therefore, high wages, or rather, high incomes of businessmen, are largely justified, because they are engaged in such work that not everyone is able to do, and which not everyone will undertake. However, in fairness it should be said that if we were all taught to do business, from early childhood, we too could do the same thing that the most famous and rich businessmen do. We would also be able to think strategically, we would be able to negotiate and take responsibility not only for ourselves but also for other people. But, as I already said, they will never teach you this at school, which means you have to figure everything out on your own. In the end, they won't offer you everything that's most profitable on every corner, and therefore we should be grateful, at least for the limited education that we don't get for free at school. After all, it's better than nothing. However, despite all of the above, it should be noted that knowledge of business and money in general will not be enough to start doing it. It is important to have the appropriate character for this business, so that you can deal with a person who has decided to do business or is already doing it. But many people have big problems with this, with their character. Even those people who are currently actively engaged in business have a lot of problems with discipline, responsibility, consistency, seriousness, and similar qualities, without which it is impossible to create something truly serious and complex. I am talking about this based, among other things, on my own experience. Sometimes, it was very difficult for me to find normal business partners to cooperate with. Sometimes, some of these partners openly threw me. And sometimes, some of them were no better than those ordinary workers who are negligent in their work and need a good scolding, without which they cannot do anything humanely. And if we have so many slackers working in business, then what can we say about ordinary workers who sometimes can't get their own family in order, can't sort themselves out, let alone conduct serious business with serious people? So business is not a toy, unless of course we are talking about serious business, in which you have to answer for your words and in which any childishness is unacceptable. But if we talk about selling and reselling jeans, as well as installing plastic windows, and similar primitive types of activity, then these businesses can be done with 2 or 3 years of education. Please do not be offended by those who are engaged in this business in all seriousness. You are sure you understand who I am talking about. We have a lot of incompetent businessmen, some kind of collective farmers, who have mastered the most primitive schemes of parasitism, and now imagine themselves to be God knows what. But with serious competition, all these boys and girls, so-called businessmen, serious uncles and aunts, would quickly eliminate. That is why our state, despite the fact that it joined the WTO, has to protect its market from an aggressive external environment. Of course, how can such mediocrities, who can only create pyramids and cheat their clients and partners, withstand serious competition with real businessmen who first of all think about clients, and only then about money? The culture of communication and the culture of behavior, intellectual superiority, a strong character, pragmatism, strategic thinking, flexibility of thinking, responsibility, consistency in one's actions. How our business lacks all this, which, although it has succeeded in some areas, is still very weak, compared to business in developed countries. True, as far as I know, intellectually in Europe, too, business is weakening, judging by the words of one German businessman, since the resale of cheap Chinese goods does not develop a person as much as, for example, the creation of a new highly efficient and high-tech production, the introduction of more modern technologies, the development of these same technologies, and so on. Buy and sell, you don't need a lot of intelligence in this matter. But to come up with, create, promote, and then sell, that's a completely different flight of thought. So character is not knowledge, not training, it is upbringing, it is work, hard and painstaking, which parents must do to raise a future businessman, a future leader, a future free person, capable of taking care of themselves and, if necessary, taking care of others. But do parents know how, and most importantly, do they want to raise their children this way? Do they want to develop a strong personality in them? No, they don't want to. Most parents don't give a damn about their children, despite all the coddling they do around their child. And despite their demonstrative love for their children, this love is often nowhere near. In fact, many parents don't think about their children at all. For them, a child is just a toy that should be the same as everyone else's. So it turns out that a bad tree produces bad fruit, which can do nothing but hard and dirty work. And God forbid if we do not occupy all these unexpected and unloved children born to bad parents with some kind of business, because then all sorts of gangs will form at an unprecedented speed, and for all these gangs, the only business will be terrorizing normal, working people. As they say, if you do not build schools, then you will have to build prisons. I would add that without factories, plants, mines, and similar places, we will have to build not only prisons, but camps, as it was under Stalin. All responsibility for their children lies with the parents, who must answer for what they have given birth to. And where do you think all these freaks and scumbags come from, because of whom normal people have no life? But they come from such bad parents, who have children, but do not want to deal with them, do not want to raise them, do not want to be responsible for them either. Therefore, in this sense, everything in our world is natural, although not entirely fair, of course, because some children are not to blame for the fact that they were born by mistake, unwanted by anyone, only because their brainless parents wanted to have sex while drunk. But nothing can be done. The same eugenics did not justify itself either, if you remember. So it turns out that the most underdeveloped and unloved people by society settle in dirty, dangerous, stressful, harmful, and low-paid jobs, where a normal person would never work, who also would like to do business and live a normal life, but due to the peculiarities of their upbringing, they cannot do this. And yet, I assure you, everyone can and should fight for a better life, for no one is a sentence, the lack of a normal education, strong character, and self-confidence. Of all people, a person can learn everything, you just need to study and not consider yourself worse than others. And now, when each of us, at a certain point in our lives, has realized for ourselves that in most cases, it is more profitable to do business than to work for someone else, we need to decide what to do next. We should not analyze our past, condemn our parents, school, society, friends, and so on. All this is pointless. The past is in the past, it cannot be changed. Each of us has gone through a certain path in our lives, for some it was harder, for others easier. But one way or another, we have gone our way, and we will go even further. New achievements are ahead of us. Now we need to think about what to do with what each of us has. Work or business, this question is no longer considered by us as a specialized question. Now it is important for us to answer another, more promising question: how can we switch from work to business, how to start working for ourselves? True, if you have a good job, from your point of view, if you think that you have nothing to do in business, if you are simply not mature enough for it or something else does not suit you in it, then perhaps you should not worry about anything, do what you are used to doing. There is a kind of work where people earn a lot of money, and therefore they do not need any business at all. But I know many people, and I am one of them, who simply cannot morally stand any work for someone else, for some uncle, precisely because of their love of freedom, independence, and autonomy. I call these people adults, because only an adult wants to make decisions in his own life, wants to command himself and his own time. But for children by nature, the instructions of a big person, daddy or mommy, are enough to start acting, to start obeying and receive goodies for this as a reward. To each his own. Let's not argue with this state of affairs and overly actively comment on it. As for business, you should start doing it with the simplest things. With the ability to negotiate with people about mutually beneficial cooperation, with making independent decisions and bearing full responsibility for them, with searching for profitable deals, and so on. In other words, you need to take the initiative into your own hands and start commanding your own time and your own strength. Stop relying on your boss and the authorities. They will never try for you, they simply do not need you. Look at a person who does something himself, who is engaged in something, some kind of business, the simplest one, you do not need to immediately consider complex examples, and makes an income from it. And start repeating after him, it is so simple. Get to the heart of how businessmen and entrepreneurs work in practice, by observing them and their actions. And then, when you yourself start to succeed, this way of earning money will become a habit for you. And work, well, what about work? Where the hell will it go from you? Think about it yourself.